The O'Reilly Factor's on tonight.
Marriage is between a man and a woman. No group, be they gays, be they NAMBLA, be they people who believe in bestiality, they don't get to change the definition.
For making that statement, the Southern Poverty Law Center has put Ben Carson on its extremist list. But there's more here than the Law Center wants you to know. The Factor is investigating.
We got to make sure that we're right-sizing our approach so that what we do isn't counterproductive. I would argue that our invasion of Iraq was counterproductive.
Another American citizen, 26-year-old Kayla Mueller, murdered by the ISIS terrorist savages. We'll tell you how President Obama is reacting and continue our reporting on this very intense situation.
Anybody who is enjoying a destruction of this man, you got to look at yourself here. And there's a lot of people seem to be real happy that his career is going down a drain.
Also ahead, millions of dollars at stake for NBC in the Brian Williams controversy. The story is getting even bigger now. We'll have the latest.
Caution, you are about to enter the no-spin zone from California. Factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly, reporting tonight from Los Angeles. Thanks for watching us. Another American killed by the ISIS savages. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. 26-year-old Kayla Mueller from Arizona is dead. Apparently, ISIS contacted her family, providing proof that she had been killed by them. This makes 4 Americans executed by the jihadists. Kayla was captured by ISIS on August 4th, 2013 in Syria while leaving a hospital staffed by the humanitarian group Doctors Without Borders. She was in Syria to help suffering refugees. President Obama said, quote, "The United States will find and bring to justice the terrorists who are responsible for Kayla's captivity and death. ISIL is a hateful and abhorrent terrorist group whose actions stand in stark contrast to the spirit of people like Kayla," unquote. The fact that these jihadists have been able to continue to murder civilians with impunity should trouble the entire world. As Talking Points has mentioned, President Obama has received advice about terrorism from 2 former defense secretaries, advice he has rejected.
The reality is they're not going to be able to be successful against ISIS strictly from the air or strictly depending on the Iraqi forces or the Peshmerga or the Sunni tribes acting on their own. So there will be boots on the ground if there's to be any hope of success in the strategy.
But Mr. Obama has said no to targeting ISIS from the ground. Why? Here's what Leon Panetta says.
He lost his conviction that we had to constantly go after terrorism, that we had to constantly be involved in a very troubled world, because I think he really wanted to hopefully be able to focus again on this country and what needed to be done here.
Mr. Panetta's statement is backed up by the president's own words yesterday.
My first job is to protect the American people, but we also have to attend to a lot of other issues, and we got to make sure that we're right-sizing our approach so that what we do isn't counterproductive. I would argue that our invasion of Iraq was counterproductive to the goal of keeping our country safe.
With all due respect to the president, this country is capable of attending to many issues at the same time, and the war in Iraq should not impede effective strategy against Muslim killers today. To allow the jihad to continue its reign of terror without a solid plan strikes me as irresponsible and dangerous. Last night I talked with David Axelrod, one of Mr. Obama's closest advisors. He, like Secretary of State Kerry, believes that air power and a paper coalition will eventually degrade the ISIS fanatics. I think Kayla Mueller might disagree. And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction. Joining us from New York City, Monica Crowley, and from Washington, Kirsten Powers. So, Kirsten, what I'm not understanding is that you have 2 former defense secretaries. You have the director of the DIA, General Flynn, all right, who'd recently retired. You have the outgoing defense secretary, all saying to the president, it's not working. All right, these guys are going to park there, they're going to sit there in Syria and Iraq, and they're going to continue their atrocities, killing civilians. Yet the president says it is working. I'm not getting that. Do you understand it?
Well, I don't think, first of all, we had a lot of people like the people you just described, people who are very respected in our society, who made very convincing arguments for the Iraq War. So let's not assume that they're right. You're willing to give them, the assumption that we should follow their lead. And I think where the president's coming from is, I don't think he buys into the idea that putting troops on the ground is going to solve this problem. I think it's probably true that without troops, it's going to be very difficult to grade ISIS. That said, I don't know that putting troops on the ground would necessarily we wouldn't necessarily have the results that we would want to have. We could end up making things worse, just like we did in Iraq.
An estimated 40,000 fighters in ISIS, and you would be able to marshal in the coalition of 60 nations, Monica, hundreds of thousands of troops with air power that ISIS doesn't have. And you would think that they would be able to defeat them fairly readily. Wouldn't be easy, but they would be able to do it. But President Obama doesn't want to do that. And that's what troubles me. He just doesn't want to do it. He could do it. American people would support it, particularly with the beheadings and the fire, and then now this poor young girl, Kayla. American people would support it. Not to occupy, just to go in, get them, get out. But he doesn't want to do it. And a very troubling situation, Monica.
Well, I'll give you two reasons why I think he will not do it in the face of this growing brutality and this growing threat bill. He came into office with two firm beliefs. Number one, that he was the anti-Bush, meaning that he was not going to preside over any major intervention, particularly in the Middle East and particularly in Iraq. And number two, this is a man who is a committed leftist who essentially believes that American power has been a nefarious tool for global injustice, and therefore the U.S. should atone for that by retrenching and apologizing and retreating. He has done all of those things, and that's why you see this systematic policy of minimizing the U.S. footprint around the world, particularly in the Middle East, and also minimizing the nature and the scope of the threats that are coming at us.
But, I mean, we have a situation now, Kirsten, where you have this group, all right? And he says, through his ambassador, Rice, it's not an existential threat. It's not like World War II or the Cold War. Do you agree with that, by the way?
That it's not like World War II? Yes,
that it's not an existential threat to this country.
It's not, at this point, it's not. No,
okay.
it's a threat to the Middle East. And I'm sorry, I just have to say, I can't listen to this stuff about how Barack Obama doesn't understand the threat of terrorism, or that he has this tiny little view of the U.S.'s role in the world. When he expanded the drone war, he escalated the war in Afghanistan. And by the way, we've been bombing in Iraq every single day. I mean,
it's not working in the sense that you can't root them out with that.
Monica, to suggest that the president doesn't care or doesn't use American power, which I'm just telling you as somebody who opposes a lot of the American power that he uses. So this narrative is just is completely false.
But I don't understand this. You oppose the American power, okay, and you don't want ground troops over there. So you're willing to live with an ISIS group that's occupying these thousands of miles and killing civilians. You're willing to live with that, and I don't understand it. I am missing it totally.
No, I think that if we're going, first of all, I don't oppose American power. I think that American power should be used wisely and smartly, and it hasn't been in our recent history. And I think that it's wreaked a lot of damage and harmed a lot of people.
Okay, but we're talking now. Let's say now.
And I know. Well, but it matters because you have to remember the same things that you're saying right now were said about the Iraq War. No occupation, in and out, we're gone. It's not going to happen. And then look what happened. We went in there.
We're seeing it before our own eyes.
We're seeing it before
our own eyes.
Let me say one other thing.
It's not like the Iraq War.
I wish that you had spent as much time on the 4,000 soldiers who died in Iraq as you have on these beheadings. Because if you had, I don't think that we would have been over there as long as we were.
That's about as cheap a shot as you could ever make.
It's not a cheap shot. It is not a cheap shot because those are 4,000 lives that are gone, and we're now supposed to go to war. It's a tragedy that these people were beheaded, but you're making it out that we're supposed to go to war because of these 4 people, and if we don't want to go to war, we don't care about them?
Listen,
I mean, that's ridiculous.
All right, you had your say, and now I'm going to have mine. And Monica, I have to apologize. We'll give you more time next week. That's a cheap shot. I went to Iraq, all right? And I was there.
Didn't say you didn't care.
And I was there, okay,
I know you were.
to support the troops who were doing their duty. There was no way that anybody could have known that the intelligence on weapons of mass destruction was faulty. There was no
really?
way.
Nobody knew?
That's right.
Nobody knew.
Hillary Clinton didn't know. Bill Clinton
Hillary Clinton is a hawk.
Everyone
there were plenty of people that
down
were raising.
The line. And you didn't know either, because no one could have known.
I actually was very, very skeptical, and I didn't support the war. But I want to be clear.
Known.
But I want to be clear, Bill. I am not saying that you don't care about the troops. I know you care about the troops. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm talking about the amount of coverage that we give to these four
we
people.
We gave an enormous amount of coverage to Colin Powell
but if we
when
covered
he went
every
on
single person
and said
that
what he
who'd
said.
been killed, I think if we'd been covering them, if we'd had seen the flag draped coffins coming back, we might not have been there as long as we were.
I say one more thing, and I got to go. Before 9/11, nobody thought Al-Qaeda was a threat. They knew Al-Qaeda was there in Afghanistan. They knew they were there. They didn't do anything about it.
It's not true.
And they hit us. This group, right this moment, is plotting to hit us. It is an existential threat. Ladies, thank you.
And we should do something smart to respond to it.
Okay. Well, you don't have it, and certainly President Obama doesn't have it. Next on the rundown, as we continue from California, the Southern Poverty Law Center going after Ben Carson in a very personal way. We'll have a report on that. And the Brian Williams story keeps getting bigger. Now the focus is on New Orleans, where he won a Peabody Award for Katrina. We'll have the latest in just a few moments.